Hello! Today we're talking about Hollywood's favorite, passengers' darling, and perhaps the most famous flying giant of all time, the Boeing 747, the aircraft that once opened a whole new era in aviation. The 747 earned the nickname Queen of the Skies and for decades stood as the very symbol of long-haul air travel. The Boeing 747 is a four-engine, wide-body airliner developed by Boeing in the late 1960s. Its unofficial name, Jumbo Jet, couldn't be more fitting, not only for its sheer size, but also for that unmistakable upper deck hump that makes it instantly recognizable. When it entered service in 1970, the 747 became the largest passenger aircraft in the world, a title it held for an astonishing 37 years. The story of the Queen began when the U.S. Air Force realized it needed a large military transport plane. In 1964, the Pentagon launched the Heavy Logistics Program. The military wanted an aircraft capable of carrying roughly 80 tons of cargo at speeds of about 500 miles per hour, 800 kilometers per hour, over distances up to 5,800 miles, 9,300 kilometers. The cargo hold had to be far larger than anything that existed at the time. Calling this project a challenge would be an understatement. Nothing like it had ever been attempted before. The massive Soviet An-22 Anti being built at the time was nearly half the size, while the fairly heavy C-141 Starlifter looked tiny by comparison, more like a minivan than a cargo giant. One of the main challenges was the requirement for front-loading. The standard fuselage layout just wouldn't work for that, so the engineers decided to raise the cockpit above the main deck. It wasn't an entirely new idea, but it was still pretty unconventional at the time. Lockheed, in its own transport aircraft design, created a narrow, low second deck that stretched almost the entire length of the fuselage, like a spine. Boeing, on the other hand, came up with a more pronounced hump right behind the cockpit that tapered off near the leading edge of the wings. You might wonder, what does all this have to do with the passenger Boeing 747? Well, during that period, the constantly expanding air travel market was putting huge pressure on airports and existing aircraft. Airliners like the Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 were simply no longer enough to meet the growing demand. For Boeing, this situation turned out to be a perfect opportunity. When Lockheed won the 1965 competition for a military transport aircraft with what became the massive C-5 Galaxy, still in service today, Boeing decided not to abandon its design efforts. Instead, the company shifted focus toward creating a passenger aircraft based on the same groundwork. The project was led by Joe Sutter, a member of the Boeing 737 development team. He launched an extensive research effort in collaboration with airlines to adapt the two-deck concept for commercial aviation. It was then that the now legendary designation 747 first appeared. Yet even inside Boeing, no one was certain the project would succeed. Many in the aviation world believed the future belonged to supersonic airliners. Still, Boeing's most loyal customer, Pan American World Airways, believed in the idea and placed an order for 25 aircraft worth $525 million. As early as 1964, Boeing's leadership decided that the company's Renton plant in Washington state, where the 707, 727, and 737 were being built, could no longer be expanded. If the company was to construct a truly large, next-generation aircraft, it would need an entirely new facility. It was an expensive decision, but the only possible one. In 1966, about 30 miles or 50 kilometers north of Seattle, Boeing purchased 780 acres or 320 hectares of land and began construction of a new plant, the now legendary colossal Boeing factory. Today it remains the largest building in the world by interior volume, and it's where all of Boeing's wide-body airliners are produced. Mel Stamper was appointed director of the new facility, and for the next 4 years, he practically lived in his office, given the relentless pace of work and the massive production schedule. Boeing had promised to deliver the first aircraft by 1970, meaning the company had less than 4 years to design, build, test, and certify an entirely new airplane. The distinctive hump, a slightly shortened and narrowed version of the upper deck, was retained in the design. The plan was to use that space for first and business class passengers or as a lounge area, much like the luxury zones airlines such as Emirates featured today. The wings, designed for speeds of up to 590 miles per hour, were moved from the top of the fuselage to the bottom, adopting the now classic configuration. When it came to engines, the first-generation Boeing 747 packed an incredible amount of power. Each engine produced up to 23.5 tons of thrust, nearly 3 times that of a Boeing 707 engine. Both General Electric and Pratt & Whitney, originally working on engines for military transport aircraft, were developing breakthrough high-bypass turbofan technology. Today, such engines are everywhere, but back then, it was cutting-edge innovation. While General Electric built engines for the C-5 Galaxy, Pratt & Whitney decided to hang its brand-new JT9D engines under the wings of the Boeing 747. Those engines were still rough around the edges and prone to failures in the early stages, but innovation never comes without problems. The new power plants were so large and powerful that the turbine components would deform under excessive load. Engineers spent countless hours troubleshooting and burned through dozens of engines on the test stands before they finally got it right. Another major challenge was infrastructure. At that time, airports were designed for piston, turboprop, and early jet aircraft, not for a giant as heavy as the 747. Waiting for airports to evolve wasn't an option. The new jet had to work with what was already there. To make that possible, the 747 was equipped with a 5-leg landing gear system and the most advanced wing high-lift devices ever built, allowing it to take off and land safely at relatively low speeds. Joe Sutter's team worked non-stop for 28 months, heads down, no distractions. Meanwhile, many within Boeing thought they were crazy dreamers. The company's debts were mounting, and the risks were so enormous that Boeing's leadership was often accused of reckless gambling, as if they had bet the entire company on one plane. One of the unexpected headaches turned out to be evacuation. Even though Boeing had given up on building a full-length second deck, getting all passengers out of the shortened upper section within the required 90 seconds proved nearly impossible. To make matters worse, several volunteers were injured during the evacuation trials. Only after weeks of redesigning and fine-tuning the cabin layout did engineers finally solve the problem. Training pilots was another serious challenge. No other aircraft had a cockpit positioned that high off the ground. Taxiing such a massive plane around an airport required a completely new sense of perspective. To train pilots, Boeing built what became known as the Waddle's Wagon, named after 747 test pilot Jack Waddle, a mock cockpit mounted on top of a truck, allowing pilots to practice ground maneuvers from the correct height. In September 1968, the prototype Boeing 747-100 was ceremoniously rolled out at the new Everett plant before a crowd of employees, journalists, and airline representatives. And when the first Boeing 747 finally took to the skies in February 1969, it was nothing short of a triumph. Still, the test flights brought their share of troubles. The aircraft's highly swept wings with their enormous span tended to twist under certain conditions. At high speeds, stability issues also emerged. Engineers eventually reinforced and modified the wing structure, and an additional ballast weight was installed in the tail to help balance the aircraft's center of gravity. In the summer of 1969, the aircraft finally made its way to the Paris Air Show at Les Bourget. By the end of that year, the Boeing 747 received its long-awaited airworthiness certification. In January 1970, the very first aircraft was officially delivered to Pan American World Airways. The model entered the market slowly at first, mostly because many airports were still unable to accommodate such a large jet. But both the infrastructure challenges and the occasional reliability issues were gradually overcome. Soon, other airlines rushed to acquire their own new flagships, fueling demand even further. The press at the time debated whether airlines wanted the 747 more for its operational benefits or simply for the prestige of owning one. The main deck passenger cabin in the standard configuration offered a 3-4-3 layout in economy class and a 2-3-2 arrangement in business class, with 2 aisles running through the cabin. The upper deck was narrower, featuring a 3-3 layout in economy and 2-2 in business with a single aisle. Originally, the signature hump was fairly short, but with the 747-100B, airlines could opt for an extended upper deck. The upper deck was lengthened even further on the modern Boeing 747-8 variant. At the very front of this upper level sits the flight deck. Initially, it was designed for a 3-person crew, but over time it evolved. Today, it's standardized with the cockpits of other wide-body aircraft. The maximum takeoff weight of the Boeing 747 kept growing from model to model, from 333 tons on the original 747-100 to 448 tons on the 747-8. Its range increased as well, from about 5,300 miles, 8,600 kilometers, to an impressive 8,900 miles, 14,300 kilometers. The era in which the Boeing 747 was created left a clear mark on its design. The aircraft includes many features that were vital back then, but are less relevant today, and this contributes to its gradual obsolescence. For example, the 747 was engineered with an extremely advanced wing high-lift system, essential for achieving low landing speeds at airports with shorter runways. But today, modern airports are fully equipped to handle large jets, making such complex wing mechanics less necessary. Another interesting fact, the Boeing 747 is certified to operate safely on just 3 engines. Even if one engine fails during takeoff, the aircraft can continue its flight to its destination under normal procedures. On rare occasions, you might even spot a Boeing 747 flying with a 5th engine, but that doesn't mean it's a special version. It's simply carrying a spare engine mounted under the wing for transport. It's cargo, not propulsion. And as if that weren't enough redundancy, the 747 can even land safely if 2 of its main landing gear struts fail to deploy. Now, let's take a closer look at the different versions of the original 747. The base model, the 747-100, had a range of about 5,300 miles, or 8,600 kilometers, and could carry up to 550 passengers. The main 200 series appeared in the early 1970s. It was heavier, featured more powerful engines, and introduced a freighter version. Based on it, Boeing developed the 747 SP, a shortened fuselage variant capable of flying extremely long distances. However, with its stubbier body, it looked rather awkward, even a bit out of proportion. In 1980, Boeing unveiled the 747-300. This model featured an extended upper deck, a higher cruising speed, and greater passenger capacity. Then, in 1989, came the most advanced version yet, the Boeing 747-400. Today, most of the 747s still in service belong to this generation. The 747-400 introduced a completely new 2-crew cockpit, upgraded materials throughout the airframe, and redesigned interiors. The development took 4 full years, but it paid off. The 747-400 could now fly up to 8,800 miles, 14,200 kilometers. Its maximum takeoff weight jumped by nearly 100 tons compared to the original model, and seating capacity increased to around 660 passengers. In 2000, Boeing once again began modernizing the 747 to respond to competition from Europe's Airbus A380. However, the project never gained much traction. Instead, the company shifted its attention to the Sonic Cruiser, an ambitious supersonic jet concept. But that, too, ultimately never came to life. By that time, Boeing's reputation had begun to suffer. There had been plenty of bold statements and promises, but not enough real progress. However, the engineers in Seattle redeemed themselves with the introduction of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Around the same period, the company also began developing a new successor to the Jumbo family. The project was given the designation Boeing 747-8. The fuselage of this model was stretched to 250 feet, or 76 meters, about 18 feet or 5.5 meters longer than its predecessors, making it not only the longest 747 ever built, but also the longest aircraft in the world. The upper deck alone could accommodate as many passengers as an entire Boeing 737. The aircraft was powered by 4 new General Electric engines, which made it significantly more fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly. The cockpit incorporated many design elements borrowed from the 787 Dreamliner, while the wings were extensively redesigned and fitted with raked wingtips, reminiscent of the Dreamliner's distinctive look. The freighter version, the 747-8F, boasted a payload capacity of up to 140 tons, making it the second largest cargo aircraft in the world, right after the Antonov AN-225. Like all 747 freighters, it featured a unique hinged nose section, allowing for front-loading of oversized cargo. The passenger version was named the 747-8 Intercontinental, a nod to one of the classic Boeing 707 variants. It can comfortably carry up to 467 passengers in a 3-class configuration. There were also several special modifications worth mentioning. The Boeing 747 Dreamlifter, a bulbous, oversized transporter, was created to carry large aircraft components between production sites. Another is the Boeing E-4B, an airborne command post known as the Doomsday Plane, designed for remote control of U.S. armed forces, including nuclear operations in the event of a national emergency. The 747-100 models were later modified and used by NASA to transport space shuttles, much like how the Soviet An-225 once carried the Buran orbiter. The Boeing 747 Evergreen supertanker was designed for fighting wildfires from the air. This aircraft can drop up to 76 tons of water or fire retardant in a single run, unleashing a massive sky shower that helps contain even the largest blazes. The Boeing 747 VC-25 is perhaps the most famous 747 variant. This special U.S. Air Force aircraft, based on the 747-200B, serves as the presidential transport. 2 planes, tail numbers 28000 and 29000, are used to carry the President of the United States and are better known as Air Force One when the President is on board. The interiors were designed at the request of Nancy Reagan in the late 1980s, though her husband Ronald Reagan never had the chance to fly on them. The planes officially entered service in 1990 during George H.W. Bush's presidency. The Boeing 747 also holds one of the most astonishing records in aviation history. During the 1991 evacuation of Ethiopian refugees, a single aircraft carried 1,122 passengers, still the world record for the most people ever flown on one flight. In recent years, demand for large aircraft like the 747 has significantly declined. The rise of newer, more fuel-efficient twin-engine jets, such as the Boeing 787 and Airbus A350, combined with the overall downsizing of the long-haul market, has taken its toll. On December 6, 2023, Boeing officially announced the end of production of its legendary flagship. However, despite the end of the assembly line, Boeing 747s will keep flying for many years to come, continuing to carry passengers and cargo across the globe. That's all for today, friends. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and see you next time.